Over 60? Discover the 4 shocking carbs to avoid and the 4 amazing ones that transform your health. Jack Reynolds shuffled into the seminar room, a knot tightening in his stomach. The bright lights and familiar faces did little to ease his anxiety. Gossiping neighbors exchanged glances, eyebrows raised in judgment. What was he doing here at this seminar? Why had he listened to Emily, his daughter, who insisted this was the first step to reclaiming his health? Memories of gasping for breath at the doctor's office flooded back, mingling with the fear of change. Carbs, the presenter began dramatically, the hidden villains. Jack felt the words slicing through his beleaguered resolve. His attention snapped as the speaker listed off the cursed food items. Creamy pasta salads, buttery biscuits, his mother's glorious lasagna. Each mention pounded against his heart like a hammer, the memories scraping at him. Family cookouts, laughter echoing around tables, his late wife's warm embrace, the love innate in every meal. Could he really let those go? The very thought gripped him in a vice of nostalgia and dread. He shifted uncomfortably in his chair, heart racing. The presenter continued to list amazing alternatives: quinoa, sweet potatoes, various leafy greens. Even writing them down felt like a betrayal, a disloyalty to his cherished meals steeped in love. He glanced at his neighbors, lines worn into their faces, eyes watching him, judging what he would decide. His favorite foods had become synonymous with identity. Giving them up would be turning his back on who he was. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Panic welled inside him. Each grain of quinoa represented a bite taken from this history, and he struggled to grapple with that loss. He returned home that evening, greeted by smells that welcomed him like an old friend. Emily's birthday dinner filled the table, macaroni and cheese made indulgently with cream, fried chicken, and, sweet memories, his mother's lasagna. He felt the warmth wrap around him, yet it pulled tighter, a rope binding him to memories he didn't want to let go of. Doubt gnawed at his insides like a hungry animal. He wanted to feel joy, but dread crept in like a thief. The family reunion loomed ahead, with traditions steeped in flavors that had shaped his life. Would he betray those he loved if he attempted a change? The tension made him stiffen. He stood beside Emily, who beamed with anticipation, but Jack's heart twisted. Could he truly reshape the future without letting go of the past? As laughter erupted around him, the rush of the family's voices dwindled into an echo, leaving only Jack and his anguish alone. Would choosing health mean casting off his family's love manifested through food? Or could love adapt, finding a balance between nostalgia and well-being? The weight of those decisions pressed on him like never before. He felt the tremor in his hands, aware that soon he would have to decide. His past versus his future, attachment versus transformation. Jack took a deep breath, preparing to rise, his heart banging against his chest. The chaos of laughter surrounded him, but a different kind of silence buzzed in his mind. He was trembling on the cusp of change, and he could only wonder what lay ahead when he finally took that first step. The days following the seminar hung heavy on Jack's shoulders. Each moment felt like a countdown, a creeping reminder of the family reunion approaching swiftly on the horizon. Emily had confidently promised that she would support his journey, but the gnawing uncertainties left him questioning everything. Could he truly alter the trajectory of his health, or was he merely setting himself up for failure? Dawn spilled through the window, illuminating the kitchen where the remnants of his late wife's beloved recipes lingered in the form of cookbooks lining the shelves. Jack leafed through them, fingers brushing over the yellowed pages, sighing as the scent of nostalgia wafted up like a familiar embrace. Images danced in his mind, his wife stirring sauces, the way she'd smile when serving a decadent meal. Jack gripped the counter, his mind racing. What if he could seamlessly integrate new, healthier choices with the cherished recipes that shaped his family's history? Every detail of his life had revolved around food. But maybe this was less about erasing the past and more about evolving from it. Could he mix the delightful memories of savory dinners with a new focus on health? Each meal prepared ahead of the reunion felt like a negotiation with his own desires. He resolved to experiment. That night, he rummaged through the pantry, pulling out ingredients that once seemed immutable. Lean proteins, fresh vegetables. Jack's heart raced. This was the moment he could forge a new path without discarding joy. He crafted a plan, intent on striking a balance. A sins of the past lasagna to feed his cravings would share space on the table with a wholesome vegetable quiche, a nod to the old while welcoming the new. It was risky. Could his family accept variations of their sacred dishes without protest? As he chopped, sautéing onions and garlic, he discovered an unexpected thrill coursing through him. Cooking was a form of expression, a canvas upon which he could paint moments of health and love. Time stilled as he became lost in the rhythm of the chopping knife. The fragrant herbs whispered possibilities. He paused, catching his reflection in the window. He looked different, a flicker of determination igniting in his usually somber gaze. The day of the reunion arrived like an ambitious clock, ticking loudly in his ears. Family and laughter filled the house, a cacophony of voices overlapping in the warm atmosphere. Jack felt a surge of adrenaline. He welcomed each familiar face. Their smiles looked so inviting, but the weight of his decisions flickered uneasily in the background. As they gathered around the table, the two dishes, his beloved lasagna and the vibrant quiche, sat side by side like old friends reunited. When the first plate was passed, he watched apprehensively as his brother Ryan scooped a generous helping of the quiche, eyes narrowing in curiosity. Jack bit his lip, skepticism gnawing at him. What would the verdict be? Would nostalgia triumph, or would he witness acceptance of his new direction? Ryan took a bite and paused, eyebrows raised in surprise. Wow, this actually tastes great! A flood of relief washed over Jack, rippling through the ambiance. The laughter resumed and Jack's heart soared. A revelation struck him. He realized this wasn't just about food. It was about being brave enough to embrace change and the future without discarding cherished memories. As evening wore on, Jack felt his heart steady, proud of what he had prepared and unafraid of the beautiful connections unfolding around him. Yet a whisper nagged at him. What if these dishes sparked more profound questions about transformation within those he loved? With hope and uncertainty mingling together, Jack couldn't help but imagine how this shift would affect not just his health, but his identity. Was this the moment that could ripple into an even bigger change? The thought ignited another flame of determination inside him. The journey was just beginning, and the future loomed enticingly, filled with potential. Jack took a deep breath, the air thick with expectation. Moving forward would require more than just healthy recipes. It would demand him to confront deeper truths. What unexplored dimensions of himself were waiting just beyond the threshold? The days following the reunion felt like an awakening for Jack. The victory over his culinary fears was more than just a meal shared. It had ignited a spark deep within. With every taste of the quiche met with smiles and laughter, he realized he had taken his first step into a realm of possibilities. Yet, despite the warmth that surrounded him, doubt simmered beneath the surface. Was this newfound courage sustainable, or would it fade away when faced with real obstacles? Jack returned to his routine after the family had left, lingering at the table as remnants of the night slipped away. He had weathered the initial storm, but that was just the beginning. Each time he picked a recipe from the shelves, he felt the weight of decision. The battle between nostalgia and the promise of a healthier future loomed large. Nudged by an impulse, he picked up a notepad and jotted down a list of goals, his handwriting steady. The first step was straightforward: integrate healthier cooking into his weekly routines. But then came deeper reflections. What did he truly want? Was it merely to avoid health issues, or did he crave a transformation that echoed throughout his life? The thought took root, twisting and turning through his mind like the noodles of the lasagna he had made. Jack began to chart the emotional landscape of his cooking. He recalled how each dish evoked memories, stories, and connections to loved ones. Food was undoubtedly an expression of love, yet it was also a long-forgotten manifestation of nurturing himself. Would re-establishing that connection with food aid his journey to better health? His new goal emerged: a weekly cooking session where he would explore healthy recipes, incorporating new flavors while honoring the culinary heritage of his late wife. He envisioned this endeavor as a way to continue their dialogue through food, blending the lessons of the past with the aspirations of his future. As he put his plan into motion, he sought inspiration online and perused the local farmers market. Each visit fueled his sense of discovery. He met local farmers and engaged in conversations about foods he had never considered before. And insight struck him like a bolt of lightning. Cooking could no longer be a solitary experience. It could involve sharing ideas, recipes, and laughter. Jack decided to invite Emily, who had shown unwavering support throughout his journey, to join him on this culinary adventure. The thought both excited and terrified him. Would she perceive this as a mere hobby or recognize the significance of what he aimed to create? It was a daunting prospect, opening his kitchen to someone else, but the desire for collaboration beckoned him forward. When Emily arrived for their first cooking session, the air crackled with anticipation. Ingredients were laid out as they kicked off with a simple dish, a vibrant salad bursting with colors. Jack marveled at how cooking alongside Emily transformed the kitchen into a workshop for creativity and laughter. Their playful banter as they chopped vegetables solidified a bond that transcended the task at hand. However, amidst the joy, a wave of vulnerability washed over him. Was this camaraderie just a temporary flourish, or could it evolve into something lasting and significant? The uncertainty shadowed the fun and pressed upon his heart, urging him to focus on deeper fears, beyond the meals they whipped together. As the dishes grew more complex with each session, Jack leaned into those uncertainties. What insecurities was he confronting? What latent abilities were yet to be unearthed? His commitment to cooking not only the act itself, but was catalyzing a broader inquiry into who he was becoming. It was a moment of truth unfolding before him, illuminating something buried beneath layers of past performance. Time sped by, and before long, Jack and Emily had developed a rhythm in the kitchen, cooking side by side. The joy of shared experiences filled their existence, yet Jack couldn't help but wonder, could this partnership withstand greater challenges beyond flour and sautéed vegetables? He felt the collective energy shift as a nagging thought burrowed deep within him. What deeper revelations awaited beyond the chopping board, and could he ultimately confront the very core of what defined him? His pulse quickened as he processed the questions swirling in his mind. The kitchen had become his classroom, revealing myriad dimensions of himself he hadn't fully acknowledged. New doors hinged on the prospect of unearthing hidden aspects of his identity. But would he have the courage to step through them? The moment felt electric as he prepared for the next leap forward, one that intertwined his personal development with the intricate layers of his life yet to be explored. The following week brought a crispness to the air that invigorated Jack. As he stood in his kitchen, the late afternoon sun poured through the window, illuminating the remnants of his previous cooking sessions. This time, the idea of welcoming Emily back filled him with more anticipation than anxiety. He had learned that each experience in the kitchen was one step closer to embracing vulnerability, a lesson he hadn't anticipated when he had ventured down this path. Jack had chosen a new recipe, a wholesome grain bowl that blended quinoa, roasted vegetables, and a zest of lemon tahini dressing. Each ingredient represented not only nourishment, but also a continued dialogue with his past. He mulled over family meals filled with carbohydrates, starches that had once brought comfort, but now weighed heavily on his conscience. This dish was his commitment to redefining what comfort food meant. As he prepared for Emily's arrival, Jack meticulously organized the produce before him, the vibrant colors energizing him. He turned to a small notepad where he sketched out the recipe's nuances. But midway through, his thoughts drifted back to the kitchen dance they had shared, the laughter, their back-and-forth camaraderie that felt charged with promise. Why did building this partnership feel so crucial? When the doorbell rang and Emily entered, her easy smile lit up the space. Together, they began chopping vegetables while exchanging ideas about the balance of flavors they sought. Jack felt his confidence swell. This interaction no longer felt like a tentative collaboration, but a genuine partnership. The laughter flowed like wine as they chatted about everything from childhood cooking experiences to aspirations for the future. Jack observed how Emily's views on health infused his understanding of food with a depth that was refreshing. In some twisted way, their discussions about nutritional choices mirrored the conversation he had with his late wife, a manifestation of love through food continuing to evolve. Yet, with every stirring of the bowl, a flicker of apprehension lingered. Thoughts of past failures ambushed his cognition. Each misadventure in the kitchen before seemed amplified in the face of success. Was this fleeting excitement merely a facade for the deeper fears that loomed? The adrenaline of their creative process masked an undercurrent, a question of how fragile his self-discovery would prove to be amidst trials yet unseen. As they moved to plate the grain bowl, a bolt of inspiration struck. Jack found himself leaping into an idea. How about we document our culinary journey? Capture the recipes we create, the laughs we share, and those moments of failure. The suggestion hovered in the air, charged with vulnerability. Emily's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. Yes, a blog could serve as an archive of our cooking adventures. It could even help others. The weight of commitment lingered in Jack's chest, but the thrill of moving outside the familiar boundaries filled him with resolve. Yet, just as excitement bubbled, a grim undercurrent threatened to drown his enthusiasm. What if they ultimately disappointed those who read their blog? What if their culinary partnership was merely a transient phase? The doubts jostled for attention, scrambling for dominance. Still, a simmering determination chased away the shadowing fears. By deciding to embark on this shared venture with Emily, Jack was not merely opening the doors of his kitchen, he was ushering in new elements of both trust and accountability. He embraced the idea that growth wouldn't be linear, and that setbacks could become opportunities for learning. As they savored the finished dish, Jack realized he must confront these doubts head-on. In that moment of delight, he committed to the partnership, both with Emily and himself. Whether or not they faced issues in the future, he vowed to remain open to growth and adaptation. Then, just as they finished their meal, the phone rang. Emily glanced at it, her expression tightening. "It's my mother," she said, her voice shifting from lighthearted to serious. Jack sensed an impending storm brewing just beyond their culinary bubble. "Do you need to take it?" he asked tentatively. "Yes, but let's talk afterward. I'll be back quickly." As she stepped outside, Jack sat alone at the table, the quiet of the kitchen pressing in. What would this phone call unveil? What new challenges awaited their culinary partnership? And could it truly withstand the tests ahead when life interrupted? The questions tangled within him like the uncooked pasta drying on the counter. The commitment he had just made felt fragile, yet he could only wait to see how the next chapter unfurled. Jack's mind raced as he sat at the table, the empty bowls before him reflecting not just the meal they had shared, but the possibilities that lay ahead. The warm glow of the afternoon sun faded, replaced by the cool shadows that crept in through the window. Each passing moment drummed a rhythm of uncertainty against his chest, a lingering reminder that life had its own way of intruding on carefully laid plans. As Emily's laughter faded with her departure, Jack felt an abrupt loneliness seep into the air. The excitement of their new partnership sat on one shoulder, but the weight of potential disappointment settled heavily on the other. Doubts bubbled beneath the surface, like water about to boil, forcing Jack to confront a truth he had tried to ignore. He was investing in a venture that was inherently vulnerable. While waiting, he leaned back in his chair and reflected on the evolution of his journey. The kitchen had once been a battlefield, each meal a proxy for his grief. Now, however, it had transformed into a sanctuary, a place where creativity blossomed amidst collaboration. Even with that transformation, Jack understood that unearthing his potential alongside Emily came with a trade-off: fear of failure. The idea of sharing their culinary experiences through a blog felt like a double-edged sword. On one hand, it could foster connection and serve as a platform for shared growth. On the other, the fear of scrutiny from the outside world clawed at him. What if they didn't meet expectations? What if they stumbled publicly rather than found success? A sudden noise from outside pulled him from his spiral of uncertainty. Jack glanced out the window and saw Emily pacing the porch, phone pressed to her ear. Her brow furrowed with concern. The lack of ease in her posture ignited a sense of urgency within him. The phone call, undoubtedly serious, probably contained implications that could extend far beyond that moment. He stood up, moving toward the window as if to catch snippets of her conversation. A part of him desired to dive into the fray, to assure her that he would stand by her side regardless of the tempest she was weathering. But he quickly quelled that impulse, knowing that sometimes one must confront their storms solo. Jack felt a shift unfurling within him. Each moment spent with Emily had unearthed layers of his identity he wasn't fully aware of. He had always defined himself through mourning and loss, yet now, however, he began to see glimpses of a man capable of joy and connection again. Would this phone call reassure him or shatter the fragile connection they had begun to forge? As he paced, thoughts rushed in about what he could do to support her. The hesitation hung thick in his head, a stark contrast to the urgency of action clamoring beneath the surface. Should he prepare some snacks for her return? Would it help distract her from whatever was troubling her? His instinct was to protect, but the complexity of stepping forward unraveled into a myriad of choices. Making a decision meant stepping away from inaction and into the fray, into the reality of shared emotional weight. As sensing his resolve, the door creaked open and Emily stepped back inside. Her demeanor had softened slightly, but the weight of the call lingered. "Sorry about that," she said, her voice steadier. "It was more than I expected." Jack felt the air thicken with unspoken words. "Is everything all right?" he ventured, feeling both tentative and determined. She looked directly into his eyes, a silent plea for understanding amid the fear of vulnerability. "I think I might need some time to work through things," she admitted, a flicker of sadness disrupting her usual glow. In that moment, Jack's heart raced. The commitment he had just made to himself and their venture now seemed incredibly precarious. Would their partnership hold stead against the challenges life had just thrown at them? Could he truly be there for her when the tides turned? As he opened his mouth to respond, uncertainty loomed, tangled with the need to reassure her without diminishing the gravity of her situation. This was a test not just for Emily, but for himself, the delicate balance of nurturing a relationship while confronting his own insecurities. "Whatever you need, I'm here," he offered quietly, feeling that it was time to confront the storm ahead of them together. Emily smiled faintly, gratitude shimmering in her eyes, yet Jack sensed that their journey was only just beginning. As she moved toward him, he braced himself for the challenges that would unfold, both in the kitchen and in their malleable bond. What risks would these new trials bring? What would it demand of him? As they stood on the cusp of confronting a new reality, an undeniable question lingered in the air. Would Jack find the strength to embrace the chaos, or would doubt pull him back into the shadows once again? Jack took a moment, the silence stretching between him and Emily as though waiting for the unspoken words to cascade forth from their shared vulnerability. Her request for time echoed in his mind, amplifying that familiar feeling of inadequacy. This was uncharted territory for him. He had never been one to forge connections without the undercurrents of fear tainting every step. "Do you want to talk about it?" he asked, carefully gauging her response. His intention was genuine, yet he could sense a crack forming in the otherwise solid facade of their budding partnership. The weight of her troubles hung in the air, thick and palpable. Emily shook her head, her gaze settling on the floor. "Not yet. I just need to sort through my thoughts first." Her admission felt like a plea, one that brought a torrent of conflicting emotions surging within him, an earnest desire to comfort her counterbalanced by the pang of fear that came from her reluctance. Instead of pressing her further, Jack shifted gears. He needed to channel this energy into something productive. "How about we use this time to brainstorm ideas for the blog?" The suggestion felt tentative, but he hoped to engage her thinking in a way that provided a diversion, even if temporary. She looked up, and for the first time since entering the room, Jack saw a spark ignite in her eyes. "That could work," she agreed slowly, her lips curling into a weak yet hopeful smile. As they gathered supplies from the kitchen, Jack felt the weight of her unprocessed thoughts hover like a cloud. He endeavored to balance the atmosphere, perhaps even to distract from her burden, without cleaning it up. They settled at the counter, the familiar warmth of the kitchen cocooning them, as flour and sugar found their way into bowls, a therapeutic blend of ingredients crafting more than just baked goods. With the first few ideas sketched out, Jack found himself losing track of time. He realized that a chaotic swirl of flour represented more than mere baking. It mirrored their lives, messy and uncertain, but capable of creating something beautiful. "What if we shared stories behind each recipe?" he proposed, his excitement rising. "Like how certain dishes kept me connected to my family, parts of their lives that they poured into our meals." Emily's eyebrows shot up, and a hint of her earlier enthusiasm flickered. "And I could share how food was a comfort during my darker days. It would show how we used cooking to heal." That cooperation sparked a pathway through their tumultuous situation, drawing them back toward one another instead of drifting apart. Jack envisioned how their joint experiences could breathe authenticity into the project. But as they continued brainstorming, another layer of uncertainty crept in. Was he truly ready to expose the fragility of his past to the world alongside Emily, who now carried her own shadows? The next hour flew by, filled with laughter laced with tension. Ideas bounced back and forth, and as the sun slipped behind the horizon, casting long shadows through the kitchen, Jack felt a tentative hope blossoming. But along with that hope was the realization that the path forward was far from clear. As they settled down in the fading light, exhaustion tugging at their limbs, Jack wrestled with a reframing of perspective. Ultimately, personal growth often required navigating the uncomfortable, embracing vulnerability rather than shying away from it. The risks of revealing oneself felt gargantuan, yet it also presented the possibility of connection, of deeper relationships built on shared experiences. "Emily, maybe we need to challenge ourselves, a sort of experiment," Jack suggested, buoyed by adrenaline. "What if we write our first post together and share something real and raw? We could bring our issues to the forefront." She looked at him, her brow furrowing deeper as she weighed his suggestion. A flicker of apprehension crossed her face. "You want us both to open up right away?" "I think we need to," he replied, a surge of determination bubbling within him. "I mean, that's the essence of our project, isn't it? To be genuine?" But as he met her gaze, he could almost feel her hesitance, the trepidation that might keep her from fully committing. Would revealing their wounds allow healing, or would it fracture what they had built? The question hung in the air, silent yet weighty. Jack's heart raced as he pulled together his resolve. He could already sense the oncoming storm as they approached new depths of honesty. Would this reckoning strengthen their bond or tear them apart entirely? The kitchen felt like it held its breath, tension coiling tightly like a spring, ready to snap. This was just the beginning, and somewhere below the level of their brewing storm, Jack discovered the stirring of courage. He would have to summon it soon, and he realized that facing this challenge, whatever lay ahead, might just be the crucial step they both needed. And yet, on the periphery of that courage loomed doubt. Would they each be able to navigate the choppy waters of exposure? Somehow, the time had come to embrace their conflicts, and Jack knew the next decisive moment was inching closer. Would they weather the chaos, or would fear drive them apart? Jack's thoughts churned as he stood at the kitchen counter, the remnants of their earlier conversation echoing in his mind. The prospect of sharing vulnerabilities not only scared him, but also filled him with a strange sense of anticipation. He had spent most of his life shying away from the raw honesty he now considered essential. The question remained, could he truly step into the unknown alongside Emily, embracing that emotional exposure? "Here's the deal, Emily," he said, his tone shifting from tentative to resolute. "I can't expect you to dive into this unless I take the plunge first. Let's write it together. My story first, then yours." His heart hammered. He wasn't one to rush headfirst into emotional depths. Emily's gaze pierced through him, as if searching for sincerity. "You're willing to bare yourself for this?" she asked, incredulity tinged with curiosity clear in her voice. "More than willing. It feels like the only way we can truly be real with our audience. We're sharing recipes, but more than that, we're sharing moments that matter," he replied, the urgency of his words surprising even himself. Her gaze softened, revealing a glimmer of appreciation. "All right, let's do it. But I'm scared, Jack. This isn't just about food. It's a piece of me being laid out for everyone to see." "I understand, and I'm scared too," he admitted, feeling more grounded now that he had stated it aloud. "But that's where growth happens, right? In the uncomfortable spaces?" As she nodded slowly, a collaborative spark ignited between them, prompting Jack to embrace the impromptu partnership. They gathered their thoughts, and he prepared to share the depths of his experience, strategically edging closer to the poignant revelations that shaped him. The kitchen became their sanctuary, a haven mixed with vulnerability and ambition. Jack recalled the summer evenings spent in his grandmother's kitchen, the scent of sweet cinnamon and baked apples wrapping around him like a warm embrace. "My earliest memories are intertwined with food," he began, his voice steady despite the emotion coursing through him. "It was her way of showing love, like how she'd consistently put my favorite dish on the table after a long day." His storytelling flowed, detailing both bitter and sweet moments, from the comfort of companionship to the isolation he often felt. But, eventually, food became this silent enemy for me. I can't forget the way I counted calories like they were a lifeline, thinking that if I could just maintain control, I would find happiness. It consumed layers of joy.
He paused, the weight of his truth hanging heavily in the air. He watched Emily, her expression a blend of empathy and admiration. "Your turn," he said, an invitation draped in soft reassurance. He recognized that sharing his scars had opened a door for her, revealing the path they needed to tread together. Emily took a deep breath, her vulnerability palpable. "Food has always been complex for me too, but in a different way. It was my solace during trying times. Growing up, meals were a constant source of anxiety, discomfort around the table, tension with family. But when I learned to cook, it transformed from obligation to art." Jack leaned in, captivated. "Tell me more." As their voices wove stories filled with vulnerability and resilience, he felt an unseen weight begin to lift. Though their expositions were personal, they forged a connection, an understanding that surpassed the fear of exposure. Hours passed, and the project began to take shape. Each dish they discussed became infused with meaning, memories dancing intricately alongside ingredients. Yet, beneath the warmth, Jack sensed a tremor of uncertainty still brewing. The crux of their revelations loomed closer, and with it, the rawness of their decisions. Would they be able to sustain this newfound connection beyond the kitchen, where doubts could resurface in silent moments? The intricacies of their pasts felt simultaneously liberating and terrifying. Jack felt the urgency to act, to delve deeper into intimacy rather than skimming the surface. "Let's make this post a true reflection of who we are," he urged. "Let's commit to sharing not just textures and tastes, but the emotions that shaped our recipes." Emily's hesitation was palpable, the clouds of doubt mingling with the warmth of connection. "If we do this, we're truly laying ourselves bare. It can't be just another post." Jack nodded, sensing the gravity of her word.
This project was more than a creative outlet. It felt like a reckoning, a make-or-break moment for both of them. "Then let's go all the way," he concluded, determination fortifying his resolve. But as he felt the surge of courage within him, lurking shadows of fear hovered closely. What if revealing their truths led to a fracture rather than a bond? The kitchen held its breath once again, the air thickening with unspoken expectations. Jack realized the moment was upon them, the catalyst for their stories to intertwine even further. Together, they had ventured into new territory, but ahead lay a crossroads where trust would be the true measure of their partnership. Could they sustain this connection when the lights dimmed and the real world crept back in? Jack's pulse quickened at the realization that the stakes were becoming more personal and demanding. The time had arrived for them to confront their inner fears, a step undeniably necessary but riddled with the potential for disaster. Would they emerge from this journey stronger, or would the fissures of fear determine their fate? The uncertainty loomed like an impending storm, waiting for the storm to break. Jack shifted uneasily, the weight of their decision pressing down on him like a heavy blanket. He glanced around the kitchen, the familiar surroundings now infused with a sense of dread. The counter bore witness to their unfolding narratives, yet it also stood as a reminder of the emotional barricade he would need to dismantle. "All right, let's start with the introduction," Emily suggested, her voice a steady anchor in the charged atmosphere. Jack could sense her own apprehensions, that delicate balance of excitement and fear mirrored within her. He nodded, taking a deep breath to capture the moment. In doing so, he became acutely aware not just of the recipe they were crafting, but also the recipe of their unfolding partnership. "Maybe we should talk about why we're even doing this, what it means to both of us," he suggested, distilling their collective intent into something concrete. The thought triggered a sequence of mental calculations, weighing his desire for authenticity against the protective walls he had built over the years. Emily's eyes sparkled with interest, a flicker of enthusiasm igniting despite the lingering doubts. "Yes, but let's make sure it's not just about food trends or gaining followers. It has to be a narrative that resonates." Resonates?
The word echoed in Jack's mind, awakening memories of times when he felt starkly disconnected from the world around him. He finally admitted to himself that this project was indeed more than food. It was a conduit for connection, a medium to excavate wounds and mend scars. Each sentence they crafted together was like a brushstroke on a larger canvas, binding their pasts with their aspirations. He found himself growing more attuned to Emily's insights, wondering if their shared experience could become a balm for the isolation he often felt. "Are we ready to talk about those scars, Emily?" he asked, gauging her readiness for deeper revelations. Each word felt pivotal, as if he were standing at the edge of a precipice about to leap into the unknown. "What scares you most about this?" In response, she glanced down, working through the turmoil within. "It's the fear of judgment, I suppose. I've shared bits of my story before, but never this openly. What if people don't understand, or worse, they dismiss my vulnerability?" His urge to reassure her propelled him forward. "But doesn't the risk make it worthwhile? If we lay it all out there, we open ourselves to others in ways that matter." The sound of his voice resonated with conviction, even surprising himself. "Yeah, but what if this turns into a spectacle rather than a genuine connection?" she shot back, her apprehensions bubbling to the surface. He could feel her defenses harden as the stakes rose. "Then we learn from it, right? We use it as fuel. Isn't that what we're trying to convey?" Jack replied, his heart racing, urging himself to be the supportive partner he wished to become. They continued to shape their post, crafting lines that would draw readers in, while forging an unshakable foundation for their connection. The social media platform felt like both a tool and a battlefield, an arena where their stories would test the limits of their courage. As the session unfolded, Jack felt a flicker of discovery ignite within him. He was learning not just about Emily, but also about himself. He felt a fire of empowerment burn bright, potentiated by the act of sharing, fueling his resolve to confront his own fears. "That's it, Emily," he said, suddenly ignited by the conviction. "Let's be real and unfiltered. We've faced our struggles, we won't hide them anymore." "Together?" she asked tentatively, biting her lip, vulnerable yet yearning. "Together. This is the journey we've embarked on, and we won't shy away from it," he affirmed, his confidence bolstering with every word. But underneath the rising excitement hovered an unshakable anxiety. As he tried to hold tight to this new sense of empowerment, doubts loomed at the edges. What if their shared vulnerability led to something harmful rather than healing? Jack was ready to write a new chapter, but was he really equipped to uncover all the truths? A shiver ran down his spine as he grasped the reality of their commitment. This was about more than just an online persona. It was a sincere examination of their lives. What hidden truths were they yet to uncover? As they began to draft, Jack felt the intensity rise, knowing full well they stood at a crossroads. What awaited them on the other side of this decision? Jack's pulse quickened, a realization sharpened in his thoughts. The moment of truth was drawing nearer, and he could only hope they would merge stronger for it. Would they soar to new heights, or crash in the aftermath of their revelations? The storm of emotional exposure approached, and there was no turning back now. The next morning, Jack awoke unusually early, a whirlwind of thoughts spinning in his mind. The sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, casting warm streaks across the counter, where the previous day's raw emotions still lingered like a fragrant residue. Taking in the space around him, he felt an unsteady combination of hope and trepidation wash over him. Would their plan to share their stories reconcile their pasts with their future ambitions? With a moment of self-reflection, he recognized the power of vulnerability and how it could either build connections or lay bare the wounds he'd long tried to conceal. As he poured himself a cup of coffee, he caught a glimpse of his reflection in the dark liquid. There, he saw the man caught between contradiction. a yearning to forge deeper connections with Emily, and a fear of exposing the more fragile parts of himself. As he sat at the table, he grabbed his notebook, flipping through the pages filled with jumbled thoughts and musings about their project. It served as a testament to his internal struggle, the ideas penned down a mix of confidence and uncertainty. The act of writing had been cathartic, but he knew that the real challenge lay ahead. The words could only pave the way. The revelation of truths would demand his raw authenticity. Jack thumbed through the notes, anticipating a structured beginning and, if luck allowed it, an engaging narrative that could touch hearts. They weren't merely outlining recipes, they were unveiling their experiences, stepping into their fears. Yet, as he began to compose, a flicker of doubt crept in. What if he wasn't ready? The thought of his hidden truths surfacing set his heart racing. He put down the pen and took a deep breath, willing himself to confront his deepest reservations. What if this project revealed parts of himself he was not prepared to share? The nagging uncertainty raised questions that echoed in his mind. What would people think? How would they respond if he revealed not just the triumphs, but also the struggles that had defined him? He resolved to be honest. After finishing his coffee, he sent Emily a quick message. "Can we meet to brainstorm more about the direction we want to take? I think we need to dig deeper." Even as he sent it, a knot tightened in his stomach. What if discussing their depths exposed fractures they could not repair? When Emily arrived, her enthusiasm contrasted with the gravity of their conversation. "I've been thinking about what we discussed yesterday, Jack," she said, setting a small notebook on the counter. "We're going to need to be raw, like we talked about. The good, the bad, everything." Jack looked at her, admiration swelling for her courage. "Yeah, but can we really handle the weight of that kind of honesty? It feels daunting." "We have to," she insisted, her gaze meeting his. "This is about transforming our vulnerabilities into a narrative that connects with others. They need to see the struggle, not just the success. We have to confront our fears and be prepared for the reactions." Her words resonated, like a match striking in the dark. Jack found himself at a crossroads. He could choose to lean into the discomfort and face their fears together, or retreat back into the safety of more superficial content. What lay on the other side was unknown, but the uncertainty fueled a rising determination. "Let's do it," he said, swallowing hard, a resolve settling in his chest. "Let's put our stories out there. If we can't be real, what's the point?" Emily smiled, her eyes shining bright with encouragement. They began to draft outlines for their posts, sketching out where they would each share their truths, the moments that shaped them. Jack found the process exhilarating and terrifying all at once. Each word was a step toward clarity, but it also tore at the delicate fabric of his carefully curated self-image. With every keystroke, he felt exposed, yet lighter as he peeled back layers he had learned to mask. By confronting his fears head-on, he began to recognize hidden strengths, his sensations transforming from anxiety to empowerment. Yet, as they navigated their deeper truths, the shadows of self-doubt loomed larger. Would people truly connect to their radical transparency, or would it leave them vulnerable to harsh criticism? The thrill of potential connection was often shadowed by the specter of judgment. As they wrapped up for the day, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they were arriving at a precipice from which they might not return unchanged. Bound to share more than just a recipe, they were on the verge of revealing themselves. Would this plunge into the unknown fortify their collaboration or unravel it entirely? In that moment, the realization struck. The journey ahead was as vital as the destination. The looming storm of vulnerability awaited them, and Jack braced himself for what lay ahead. But as he stared into the distance, he knew one thing was certain. He had taken the first bold step in a transformative journey. What awaited him on the horizon? The weeks that followed Jack's pledge to fully embrace vulnerability felt like a whirlwind of emotions, each day presenting new hurdles and revelations. He and Emily dove into the depths of their experiences with fervor, the once daunting task of sharing their stories transforming into a vital source of strength. Each recipe they created became more than just a culinary experiment. It served as a chapter in their evolving narrative, one filled with laughter, tears, and a burgeoning understanding of who they were and what they could accomplish. Jack found himself recounting his journey with startling honesty.
He began to unpack memories. His grandmother's kitchen, where comfort mingled with reliance on food, and the painful realization of how emotionally laden meals had once defined his existence. Each shared moment with Emily became a thread weaving through their stories, binding them closer together as they crafted their blog posts. One evening, as they sat side by side at the kitchen island, a soul-warming aroma of roasted vegetables wafted through the air. Jack glanced at Emily, who was meticulously chopping fresh herbs. "You know," he said, casting aside initial hesitation, "I think we're onto something special here. I can feel the shifts. My relationship with cooking, with you, it feels different now." Emily paused, looking up at him with a mix of surprise and agreement. "That's what I've been thinking too. It's as if opening up made way for a new chapter. How often do we allow ourselves to experience flavors of life without the burden of fear?" Something shifted in Jack's perspective, an optimized focus emerging where he once felt frayed. The act of vulnerability had emboldened him to connect with others, his family, himself, and Emily, in ways he never anticipated. The notion of sharing the painful memories along with joyful moments revealed a hidden strength, a space where healing blossomed. As they prepared to launch their blog, Jack felt an undeniable sense of purpose, bolstered by the experience of facing his fears. But, along with the exhilaration, came a sharp realization. The journey demanded more than just sharing. It required consistency and resilience. They had to be prepared for potential criticism and doubt, especially as they sought to portray authenticity. One crisp Saturday morning, they sat down to pen their inaugural blog post, narrating their stories intertwined with the recipes they adored. The words flowed from their hearts, unfiltered and raw, as they crafted an introduction about the significance of sharing vulnerabilities through food. Jack felt alive in that moment, alive on the precipice of emotional discovery, as the swirling chaos around them faded into a purposeful silence, filled only with determination. As they hit publish, Jack's heart raced. This was no longer just a project, it was an act of courage. After weeks of planning and creation, their thoughts would resonate with the world. They leaned on each other, awaiting the response. Days rolled into one another as their post gained traction, drawing comments and shares from friends and strangers alike. He and Emily soaked in the positive affirmations that flowed their way, each one a reminder of the power of vulnerability. A week later, Jack received news that the local community center was interested in hosting a cooking demonstration featuring recipes from their blog. The excitement within him was palpable, yet the pressure to deliver suddenly felt formidable. This would require him to once again stand in front of others, exposed, but more prepared than ever. The legacy of his fear of judgment loomed large, but it no longer defined him. Preparing for the event heightened Jack's sense of accomplishment. He envisioned a space filled not with judgment, but warmth and connection. He was ready to share not just recipes, but stories of resilience and personal growth. On the day of the demonstration, he felt a flicker of nerves, but he reminded himself that he was no longer the man who had shied away from life. He had transformed into a catalyst for change, both within and around him. When he and Emily stepped onto the stage, the crowd welcomed them with warm smiles and anticipation. For the first time, Jack felt true confidence surge within him. He had taken ownership of his narrative. As he began to speak candidly about the significance of the recipes, the audience leaned in, fully engaged. He skillfully intertwined shared confessions with each step of the cooking process, bridging the gap between nostalgia and health. Watching the audience nod along in appreciation and understanding filled him with an undeniable satisfaction. That connection was everything he hoped to achieve. Jack realized that this moment was the culmination of all he had worked toward, showing that growth often arises from the courage to confront what we fear the most. As the demonstration concluded and applause filled the air, Jack turned to Emily, their eyes locking in shared recognition. They had conquered not just the fear of judgment, but also embraced their narratives, transforming their pain into inspiration. This feeling was solidified in that moment, a testament to their evolution and partnership, proving that vulnerability could give rise to strength. In the days that followed, Jack found solace in knowing he was on a path defined by resilience rather than fear. Their blog continued to flourish, gathering followers who resonated with their honesty. Jack felt solid in himself, the confidence solidified further by newfound recognition. He had established his voice and competence, finally carving a niche that amplified not just his culinary skills, but his identity as well. This journey was far from over, but it was now filled with purpose, connection, and a deep-seated belief in his capability to grow and evolve. As he stepped back into his kitchen, he smiled. This place was now a symbol of transformation, a bridge that fused his past with the limitless potential of his future. True fulfillment awaited beyond the horizon, and Jack knew he would continue to embrace it with every step he took. He felt proud, confident in his abilities, and eager to share the next chapter with Emily and the world. It wasn't just about the food anymore, it was about the flavors of life, and Jack was ready to savor every moment. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending.
Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now, and this is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.